Today I'd like to continue our discussion from the Book of Joy, the book which features a wonderful dialogue between Bishop Desmond Tutu, giving us the Christian perspective, and the Dalai Lama with the Tibetan Buddhist perspective. And in this particular section, they're really talking about forgiveness and the relationship of forgiveness and joy. And one of the things that is important about forgiveness is that forgiveness is not saying that the other person is right. It's not opposing wrong. Forgiveness is really different than that. We look at the person that we're in opposition to, the person who has harmed us, the person who has caused us to be angry at their actions, and the person who has committed actions that really in many respects would be deplorable. We don't lose sight of the humanity of that person. That person, no matter how deplorable the action, how awful or how difficult for us to bear that particular action, that person is still a human being. And so we have to acknowledge that, acknowledge their humanity, acknowledge their dignity as a human being. But at the same time, respond to the wrong that they have done with clarity and with firmness. And clarity in the sense of pointing out that it is wrong, that they're hurting people by what they're doing, that their behavior is immoral in some respect. And being firm about that. And that is not a failure to forgive. We still can forgive and recognize their humanity, but we have an obligation to say that what they have done is wrong, and to be clear about that, and to be firm about that. The realization comes with that type of behavior when somebody is harming other people and harming them maybe by their remarks, maybe by their actions, maybe by being abusive in a certain respect, but they're doing harm to another person. And that type of person is suffering also. There is something in them that is causing them to do that harm. The example that the Dalai Lama used in terms of coming at it from the Buddhist perspective was with regard to the Chinese people, Chinese authorities, the Chinese soldiers even, who were acting under orders. They were doing terrible, awful things to his friends who were Buddhist, who were from Tibet. And you certainly would see that in terms of, and point out that behavior and realize that what they're doing is wrong. But at the same time, not have negative feelings towards them, but strongly opposing their actions. So we always make that distinction that as a person, we respect you as a person, as a human being, but it's your actions, your particular behaviors that we strongly oppose. Desmond Tutu points out the same thing. He says, without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. So if there's no forgiveness in us, then we're bound up with that person and feeling negatively towards that person. We don't overcome those feelings. We get trapped in those feelings. And Desmond Tutu puts it in a very interesting way. He says that person, in a way, becomes our jailer. Because of our negative feelings. They put us in a jail. We can't grow. We can't develop beyond that point. We're stuck in that feeling, that negative feeling that they have left us with towards them, whether it's a feeling of anger or a feeling of deep hurt. And so, what is the process? Desmond Tutu points it out and says we have to become our own liberator. And it's certainly part of the Christian ethic that Jesus has come to give us freedom, to liberate us from sin, to liberate us from bad feelings about ourselves, lack of love of self, lack of love of others. So there's a liberation that happens, a very important liberation, a very important sense of being free of those feelings, those negative feelings that have trapped us in that jail of hatred and anger. The Dalai Lama mentions that as well, and he says, really, forgiveness is a sign of strength. And many times, of course, it's portrayed in an opposite way in our culture. A person who is so forgiving is a weak person. Why don't they stand up for themselves more? Why aren't they more angry, physically yelling at others? That type of thing. They seem to be too passive. And that's not the case at all, because forgiveness demands strength, the strength of moral clarity, to realize that the action is wrong, is evil, is harmful, and the strength to respond to that, to have a strategy of, well, how am I going to now deal with this evil that this person is doing? Certainly pointing it out to them with clarity, but yet finding a path forward to stop the evil, stop the harm from spreading in some way. Desmond Tutu picks up on this point as well, and the whole axiom, for revenge was an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and the idea of that, of course, is a sense of balance in terms of retaliation. Don't go overboard. There's one eye, take another eye, one tooth, that type of thing. So that the punishment doesn't become so extreme, so outrageous. But Desmond Tutu takes a look at that and says, well, an eye for an eye will leave the whole world blind, because when you look at it, people are always harming other people. So, you're going to have a lot of people who aren't going to be able to see if we follow that type of path. There has to be a better way, a better strategy, certainly to resist the evil, to point out the evil, but a better strategy than just that sense of revenge, which a lot of times just can accelerate the conflict and make the situation worse. Frans de Waal, the primatologist, mentions that very interesting thing in his study, that peacemaking activities are common in the animal kingdom. So we can tend to think, well, peacemaking is a rare thing. Animals are kind of savage, they're beasts. He says peacemaking is really common. Only domestic cats have failed to show behavior that reconciles relationship after conflicts. It's interesting, only domestic cats. And maybe it has something to do with their being domesticated. So the idea of peacemaking is a very important concept, and one that certainly it's based on forgiveness, but I think a very accurate and true understanding of forgiveness.